everybody. Welcome to another online session. Today we're going to do it a bit different. I don't have as many demos and completely PowerPoint that I did last week, I mean. I will focus mainly on the source code. I would like to show you some of the things we'll be working on. And what I want to talk about today is actually a few topics that we're working on at the moment. I will spend some time on the compiler. Last week, Fabrice showed a lot about lambda expressions, and we told you that some things were not supported for code blocks. Well, yeah, nothing is as final as nothing is final basically. So we decided to put some stuff in the code block anyway. I'm going to show you something about collection initializers, something that Nico's worked on. So now you can initialize complex collections. There were some questions about public variables. In a certain syntax, I've fixed that. And manifest with the same name as the function name, just small stuff. And in the runtime, one of you asked for stupid iTunes. One of you asked for support for iDisposable in usuals. So we did that, and we got a question about improving the speed of the array access, and we worked on that too. And then the final two topics I'd like to show you is our work in progress on the typed visual objects SDK, and we'll share you some things we were doing. It says VO integration, but it had to be Visual Studio integration. So that's what I would like to show you today. So let's go at source code. Good. I hope you can see this. This is XIDE. Most of you have worked with this. Some of the people from the FoxPro community don't really know this. They switched from FoxPro to Visual Studio. XIDE is the IDE created by my colleague Chris, who's also on board today. And he created it because he simply doesn't like Visual Studio. That's correct, Chris, isn't it? And
yeah.
So
he
made it just behave just like what he wants. It looks a bit like the Visual Objects IDE, so that's why many people who come from Visual Objects use this IDE. I'm using it today now just to show you that we have alternatives, and so we can do anything. So we do now. This is written, of course, in X#. It was one of the first projects that was running live in X#. You can do anything with X#. It's a really powerful language. Anyway, the first thing I want to show you is some work on code blocks. Last week, Fabrice told you that we have lambda expressions. Lambda expression is like a delegate, and the code block is a special lambda expression, which has a usual parameter and a usual return value. Now, I'm going to show you. Let's get the sound off. Where is it? I cannot switch it off. Anyway, I'm going to show you the sample here in the debugger. I should have probably set it a breakpoint. Okay, we're in the debugger now. As you can see, I'm stepping in. Robert is, if you can drag my image down, I'm not sure why, because now the image is over the locals window. But if you would look in the locals window, you would see the code block now. And one of the things we've done is, I can probably drag this a bit to the left so you can see it. One of the things we've done is we just show you here the source code to this code blocks, and the character turn line feeds are replaced with spaces here, so you can actually see the code block that we're evaluating. And now when I step through, you can actually see that we can step inside several separate lines of a code block. I think that's really nice. if you have complicated code blocks, you can actually see it, and you can see also intermediate results. In this case, in the locals window, you can see that x has a value of 3. Well, I passed in 2, and I'm adding 1, so that makes sense. And in the type column, you can see that it is of type usual. So, like we said last week, code blocks are like a special kind of lambda, but they have usual parameters. And of course, the result will be 6. So 2 plus 1 times 2 is 6. Now, the nice thing about code blocks is that they're flexible, but since everything inside a code block is untyped, you can do this. The compiler doesn't know what you're going to send in and will happily accept it. Now, I haven't compiled in a while, so that's why it. But now, of course, as you can imagine, you will get a runtime error because it doesn't expect you to add a string to a number. So, wouldn't it be nice if we could strongly type the code blocks? Now, this is what I want to show you in the second example. This is something we've added in the last week. I think Sergio asked for it. I'm not sure if Sergio is online, but he'll be pleased to see that we've added support for this. So this is now a new code block, and we're specifying x as int. So the variable in the parameter area is declared as int, and everything inside here works with ints. So if I change this now to x plus equals 1, and I'm compiling it, now I don't get a runtime error because I cannot even compile it. It says cannot implicitly convert type string to int. So this helps me to detect things at compile time. However, a code block is still a special kind of lambda that takes usual parameters and returns a usual value. So what's happening here? Let's show you. In the code block now, when we evaluate it, in the locals window, you can see that there's a new local introduced. There's a local with a special name, xs, well, you can imagine what that is, $par underscore x, which gets the value of 2. And inside the code block, we have a separate variable with the name x, which is the name of the parameter that you declared, which is typed as int32. And everything now is done on int32s. I will not bother you with the generated IL, but it is much more efficient, of course. There's no more usual plus equals 1 or usual multiplied by 2. It's directly an integer operation, which is faster and in this case also helps you to find problems. So I think this is a nice addition. This will be in 2.5 of the compiler. I'm running the 2.5 compiler at the moment. So this is what you get in the next build. I think it's a nice addition. This will not work for macro code blocks, or I should say not yet. I think it will not be rocket science for Nichols to add something like this in the macro compiler tool. But for now, this is in the compile time code blocks, and I think it helps you find problems in your code. Okay. The other sample that I want to show you here, this was a long-standing ticket in GitHub, and the disadvantage of large fonts is that the lines do not fit. But as you can see here, I have variables of different types, and I want to initialize those with a constant. So in the first case, I have a test dictionary of 2 strings, and I'm passing in, well, I can, for the privacy, I can do this, just keep it like that. And then I said I want to initialize it with the key value pair A, B, C, D, E, F, just as a literal. The compiler recognizes this now and does the same for the second array of X. This is a string array with a comma in there, which is something different than this syntax. This is an array of strings, an array of string arrays. If you get lost, you can always use, of course, our old-fashioned VO array, VO style or Foxtrot style array, but this is the .NET style. And well, as you can imagine, this now works. So let's compile and run it. Some of you may wonder why it takes so long to compile. Well, this is a special version of Chris's IDE. It knows that it's running on Robert's computer, and it doesn't keep the compiler running all the time. So if I change the compiler in the background, I'm sure that I run the new version of the compiler, not the old one. That's why it takes a bit longer. Anyway, as you can see now, I can access element ABC from the dictionary, and I get DEF back, and I can access the elements of this string, and this specifies that there's 2 rows and 2 columns. So now I can access this by row and column, and this particular one is an array of arrays, which is something different. Anyway, you can also see that we can also access the contents of this array. So now if you have large literal arrays, you can do it in code, but you can also use the literals like this. I think it's nice that we added support for this. It was not, let's say, you could live without it, but it's nice that it's available now. Okay, that's the first thing I want to show you in the compiler. Any questions about this? Is this useful? Yeah? Okay, good. The second thing I want to show you, there was some, we've added support for publics and privates and memvars, which didn't exist in Vulkan, but we said if we want to be VO compatible, and we knew in advance that we also wanted to be Foxtrot compatible, we had to add support for publics and privates and memory variables. Now, last week someone told me that this particular syntax was not supported. I think it was also Sergio, but Sergio has the week of his life, and we've added support for that now. So you can do public with a array index syntax, or you can initialize it with an array new. The effect is the same, and it will be an array. So let's just run this. And as you can see, we have 2 arrays of 10 elements. Now, if you accidentally try to do both, so you want to set it to an array and assign array new, that's not supported. So in that case, the compiler will tell you, you cannot have it both. You cannot have an array specification and an initialization value. What we're doing is, when we see this, we generate this. So that's why you cannot use both at the same time. It doesn't make sense. Now, the other thing we did in this area is you can declare memory variables and give them a name. But before this build, that could cause problems if you had a function with the same name. Now, the compiler is now a bit smarter. So I have a memory variable test now. This actually creates, it doesn't create a memory variable. It actually tells the compiler, if you see test, then it must be a memory variable. Now we're going to show it, but the test function is not affected, so it will call the test function without problems. This didn't work in the last build, in the current build, I should say. But in this build now, the compiler is smart enough to realize that test here is now a function, and the value gets in, we'll see 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6. So what do you expect? No rocket science, but I think it's nice that we did some stuff in the area of the compiler to resolve memory variables, and also resolve function names. So for those of you who have also used this still work, and it wasn't in the current build. The third thing I want to show you it doesn't have anything to do with the compiler, but it is actually a feature of the runtime. One of our customers had a function called myCreateInstance or something like that, which creates an object, and since it doesn't know which kind of object, it returns to usual, because the object that's created is based on the name passed in. Now I have something similar over here. I have a myFactory function that returns a usual. This is now hard-coded to return test, but you can imagine that there could be a large list in here saying find the type and instantiate the type. Anyway, this now, in this construct begin using, this is a construct that tells the compiler that we want this variable, when it goes out of scope, the iDispose has to be called. Now, before the current build, that wasn't working because there was no iDispose support in the usual type. But we've changed it now. The usual type supports iDispose, and if you have the usual value is an object that implements iDispose, it will actually call it. I should say iDisposable. So let's just run this. And we see class name and before end using. And as you can see, it also has called the test dispose. The end using contains code that will check if O4 has iDisposable, and then it calls it. So before we see the after end using, the iDispose is already called. So let's run this. So you see, we see the test name. This is the object before the end using, inside test dispose, after end using. So if you in the future store a object in the usual that has an iDispose implementation, you can begin using end using. Now, of course, you could also do it yourself and get the object out of the usual and test if it implements iDispose. We're doing this now for you. Not a major, not a big thing, but I think it's convenient. So what else do we have as samples? Yeah, okay, that's array indexes. For this particular one, I'm going to compile now first. We don't do anything here, but I want to show you the generated code. Let's see where's my function. Someone told us that we have a indexer on the array class that takes a list of integers. We did that because you can do regular arrays. You can have 3, 4, 5 dimensions. But this particular customer told us, yeah, but most of my arrays have only 1 dimension or maybe 2. Wouldn't it be nice if we do not have to allocate, because that's what's happening here, it allocates in an integer array, and we can directly access it. And I think that was a good idea. So what we have done, we've created new properties in the class. And if I now, let's see that I have to go to the right folder because I was linking now against the release folder, but now I'm going to in the current debug version. And if I compile again, nothing changed in the code, nothing changed in the compiler, but because we've added overloads, you now see that it directly calls the indexer with just 99. So no integer array is created, and this should result in a bit faster performance. I wouldn't expect it to go running circles around an older version, but if you do a lot of array access, you definitely should see a bit faster performance. Okay, so this is what's ready. Now there's also something else that I would like to show you. It's not ready yet, so now I'm switching to Visual Studio. And this is what we have promised, we haven't delivered yet, but we're getting ready for release time. Now, if you come from the VO world, or if you have looked at some of our samples to migrate from VO to X#, you see that we've used the Explorer sample and the Pizza sample to show you what kind of code changes to make. These samples in my solution here are basically unchanged samples, but now instead of linking them to the normal VO GUI classes and VO system classes, I've linked them to X# VO GUI classes and X# VO system classes. And I'll show you in a minute what these things do, but let's run this first to see that it actually works. So this is a pizza sample. It's just a sample of various types of buttons. So you can see we have radio buttons with a special style. We have checkboxes with an image. I didn't create this. This is created by one of the former dev team members. And if you order something, you push buttons that have an image. And what's happening behind the scene here is now that this is no longer using Win32, but this is using WinForms. But the source code itself is just the VO source code. So we see a constructor here, just like VO generates. We see the resource here, just like VO generates. We can design it with the normal designer. So this is all normal stuff. And what you see behind the screen, behind the scenes, is actually Windows Forms. Now what you will see now, this is a dialog window, but internally it is a WinForm window. So what we've done is we created classes with the same name, but the mechanisms in which the form is created is also a bit different. But all the properties are still there. What we have done is we have strongly typed all the properties. So caption is of course a string now. The hyperlabel property returns an hyperlabel object, etc. So everything is strongly typed. Some of the methods are not strongly typed yet. So we said this is not completely ready. This is work in progress, but you get the idea. To show you, for example, a typed MDI. So this uses the GUI classes, and it uses a strongly typed version of IDD classes. And it has a help about window with the sizzling control. You can see, by the way, this is version 2.5 with a file open dialog. I know that someone asked for a resizable file open dialog. Well, it is resizable now, but it was already resizable because we're using file open from Windows Forms. If you would do the same with the basic GUI classes, it's also resizable now. We fixed that problem. Anyway, I open the customer window, and as you can see, it does an auto layout. It has a browser. It looks very much like the VO browser. It is not. It is a true .NET WinForms. I think it's data grid view, but it emulates just like what you're used to. We have the auto layout, we can tap, etc. So this is just, well, let's open two windows. I'm running the debug version now, so it's a bit slow, but you can see you can have multiple browsers next to each other. We can cascade, we can tile, everything just works as you expect. Final sample in this area is something I worked on this week. Visual Object uses a split control, which is also a CA component where we don't have the source code. But of course, Windows also knows split view controls. So where is my window? Do we have a problem now? I guess so. It's working. So this is again standard VO sample. I think I've changed one line of code, but that's about it, including you can see the status bar items, and if you move your mouse through the menu, you will see it actually display the thing on the status bar. That's all standard. You can see a Explorer view, Explorer window. This is a sub-window of Explorer with a list view here and a tree view there. Nothing special. It was a bit of work to create it, but as you can see, it works. And you can sort here on the order price, and all the list views will now be sorted on order price, just what you would expect. And you can see that the child window has replaced the menu from the shell. And if you close the child window, the menu from the shell is back again. So what's the status of this? I would say 90% is working. I'm not completely happy with everything yet. I know that the whole area of draw API, so draw objects, are not working yet. And some not often used classes, like for example, Combobox X, it's working, but it's not there yet, but .NET supports it, so it's just a question of mapping it. To give you an idea what we've done, or what I've done, actually, this is my personal project. There's a class which is a factory class that you can inherit from if you want. And this factory class has a create control method, and I'm just returning for each control type an object. And if you have a look at these objects, let's say, for example, the VO tab control, then the VO tab control inherits from System Windows Forms tab control, but you could also inherit from something else if you want. I have some interfaces that we use. We have some code that actually links this Windows Forms tab control with the tab control in the VO hierarchy, basically. And there are some methods here that actually redirect stuff. We did some tricks to allow you to set styles in the resources and then have those styles appear in the tab page. And as you can see, we have some event handlers that an on key down on the tab will actually create a control notify event and sends a tab key down to the window that owns this control. There's a whole lot of code here. I'm not going to explain everything, but it works. And to give you an idea about data windows, now I had to draw this because data windows in VO are quite complicated. There's an outside MDI child window. There's a toolbar area. There's what VO calls a frame panel and a surface panel. And we've implemented that exactly like that. So the window has a surface panel, and on the bottom there's a status bar. And sub windows, this is a difference with VO. In Windows Forms, you cannot put a window on a window. So if you want to put something on a window, you put a control on a window. Now what we're doing, if you have a sub window, you actually put a frame panel and a surface panel on, for example, the tab page, or directly on another form. Then the surface panel and the frame panel go on top of the surface panel of the host window or the outer window. And if the surface is smaller than the frame panel, then it will fit. And if it's larger, you will see a scroll bar. Now, I've disabled that, but there was quite some work to test that. During testing, my surface panels had a different color from the frame panels. So you could see from the colors that the mechanism was working. Now, what we've done for simplicity is Dialog windows also get a surface panel. So we know that all the controls are painted on top of a surface panel. So there's very little difference between a Dialog form as far as controls concerned, because they are just put on top of a surface panel. Now the rest is just a lot of code. Actually, it's not that much code. The data window itself has a bit more code because we have to take into account that there could be a data browser, and we have to make sure that we calculate the sizes. If you have a frame panel and a tab and a toolbar and a status bar, the frame panel has to sit in between. But this is all done automatically now in the code. And we're using the same factory mechanism here. So we call it create frame panel and create surface panel. And if you want to work with this and you want to do something special to the frame or surface panel, you can create your own subclass of this GUI factory and override the surface or frame panel methods and create things that you want. What's not ready yet, what I want to do is inside, for example, an edit control, I expect that I have a class of a certain name. Over here, for example, I expect a VO button. I want to change this to IVO button. So if your code doesn't return VO buttons, but something else, let's say a inflogistics or a Dialog push button, as long as you implement the interface in the layer in between, you should be able to use it. Right now, it has to be part of this hierarchy. So that requires some refactoring, not too much work, but it has to be done. So in this case, for example, you would have to have a default button property on the control object. And if you have, then I can assign the button as accept button to the form. Okay. Yeah, that's what I want to show you with regard to the typed stuff. I think we're making good progress. It's not ready yet. Right now, like I showed in the pizza sample, we are actually using the resource, because the resource contains, as you can see here, offset and position on the form. And the constructor here doesn't have points and dimensions, but it passes the resource ID and it actually reads the location and the size from the resource. Now, I'm sure that we can change the form editor to output positions and dimensions instead of the resource ID and giving it a number. This is in fact already a number. So we could say checkbox self or Dialog onion CB, comma, point, blah, 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 comma, dimension, blah, blah, blah. And then we do not need the resource, or we could directly create it. And that would get rid of all the hassle of creating the resource, because we are actually in the background now bringing up the window from the resource and then getting the positions of the controls, because the source code here doesn't store those positions. And if we do not have to do it, it would make things a bit faster. Okay. In the area of Visual Studio, I'm not going to show you any code, but we are working on improving editor speed and improving load time of the IDE. So it is already a bit faster. I made some changes, but we're not quite there yet. We also want to store the information of, let's say, this particular solution. We have about 20, 25 projects, and we're building like an object model in memory of where each class is, and we want to store that in a, well, people who from VO would say in the repository. It'll be a database. At startup of Visual Studio, when you open the solution, it will no longer parse all the source files, but it will check the database and compare which source files have been changed. For example, if you did a get latest from your source code control, and then it doesn't have to scan those files again, and it would make starting up Visual Studio a bit faster. And also, we will not keep the complete object model in memory. So if you have a large solution, and one of the customers has a large solution, I think at least that over 20,000 source code files is quite big. We will not keep the complete object model of that in memory, but we'll load it from the database whenever necessary. We're thinking about SQLite or a similar kind of database to store the object model. But the first step is improving the speed in the editor and improving the loading of the source files. And that we have quite some improvement. We're not quite there yet. And then the next step will be persisting the model and using that model. So that's what I wanted to show you for today. Now, gentlemen, I think there's no ladies today, but gentlemen, please, if you have questions, use the mic or the chat window, and I will stop sharing my window, and we can just see each other and discuss the things that we want to discuss. We are open for all kinds of suggestions. If you have ideas, let us know. If you think we're giving the wrong things priorities, that's also possible. Let us know too. It's difficult to make everybody happy. That's what I want to say in advance. We do try to listen to people, and if it's something small, for example, the strongly typed code block was relatively small, then we'll just do it when we're bored. But some other things may take a bit longer to implement. Not all at the same time. Who first? Anyone?
This is Rainer from Germany.
Yeah.
You really did a fantastic work. This is the first thing I want to say. I'm really impressed because you give a little bit back from my life. I started with Clipper and then Take Tools, and then I moved to a C compiler from a German company called DBU. They didn't make the Windows, so I moved to Foxborough and a lot of stuff. So it's really great to see that there's still a lot going on with these 4GL languages. But my question is, what is the big goal? Is it really to bring 4GL to the next level? Or is it maybe an intermediate? And then if the people see all this C# and Windows stuff, some write their own XIDE, some will then get the benefits of Visual Teams, Visual Studio. Maybe they raise it to another level. Normally my regular job is I'm a so-called release manager. So I do a lot with HR processes, but in the background I have a Foxborough application. And I wanted to bring it to the next level with testing. What is the big goal of X#? Is it really to convert all projects with 4GL, or is it bring it to a next level? You really spend a lot of...
it's a bit, it depends on who you ask. Most of our customers have many years of software development done in tools that are no longer supported by their vendors, Visual Objects or Vulkan, FoxPro. Xpression Plus is still under development, but it's, let's say, it's like a turtle. It's really slow, and there's not much progress. So what we try to do is give those customers with their projects a step into .NET, into the future. Because most of these languages are all Win32. Harbor, for example, is also Linux, Unix, but there's no real future there because these products are frozen. We want to give people the chance to bring their apps to .NET. Now, we do know that the X-based languages are, my son calls it a bit like dinosaur language. It's a language from the past. It's very difficult to find new developers who understand this language. But by bringing it to .NET, it opens the opportunity to use components in C# and mix it, or inherit from your X-based component in C# and extend it. So we want to bring the apps in an environment where you can find new developers. And some of you will use this as an intermediate step. Others will say, oh, I'm so happy, I'm going to stay here for the next 10, 20 years. I don't know. It depends on where you come from. I wouldn't expect people to do complete new development in X#, but I know there's also some of you online now who do not agree with me and says, oh, this is the best language ever. the X-based language, and now it is .NET. I want to continue using it. So, but I can see a business case for bringing your source code over and then somehow freezing it and extending it with C#. Or if you have to, of course, edit it in the source, yeah, it would be, you can still do it. But I can also imagine people who say, okay, we freeze our existing code base and now we're going to extend it, or we're going to expose it through a web service. That will, of course, only be possible if you have designed your apps in such a way that your UI and your business logic is separated. Yeah. So I see it as a migration step forward, and to enable it for customers to work with other languages side by side and extend it. But I also know some people will want to use it forever.
Okay. The funny part is somebody knows I'm using Foxpro, but for so-called in-house tools. And he wrote my CV because a company was looking for a Foxpro programmer here, and they have a lot of packages written in Foxpro all over Europe, but I think it's something with social applications like churches and donations, electricity and all, but it's on Foxpro. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, I do believe it. I've seen many apps there. Yeah.
But they're still running. Why you won't keep them? I'm doing this job now. I think it's about 15 years and longer. And of course, we have these power tools by these power companies. When it comes up for setting in-house tools, they tell them a price and they're shocked. So I use my stupid, sorry, call it stupid, Foxpro application with some funny tables doing a complete multi-level project management tool. And of course, I want to move this to X#, because in X# I have the combination, for example, of combining with Iron Python, where we do so-called stability tests and all this stuff. So there's a tool. But really, if you start talking about 4GL language, you're out. They're laughing about you.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I want to call X# a 4GL language. It's a discussion. Foxpro has the built-in embedded SQL. That's more like a 4GL. We do not have that. We plan to add it, but we do not have that yet.
Yeah, but Microsoft does everything to kick out Foxpro. They kick out OP logs. So I have the one database is running in East Europe, the other one is running in Germany. They kicked me out the OP logs. You know, I could never do a multi-user application with Foxpro tables. We don't have much data. The key is the data, but they remove everything from their global networks to make my life harder.
Yeah, well, that's too bad. I understand your concern. We all have the same concerns with regard to opening files in a shared environment. But I would also recommend people, we've been recommended this for decades, if you have a serious amount of data, it's probably a good idea to switch from file sharing to a real database.
It's correct.
And then you could use Microsoft SQL Server, for example, also MySQL and the other languages.
I would love to do this, but then I have to deal with global IT structures, and this is not funny.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I still keep my Foxpro tables. I want to use any kind of servers. If you have a look at the license model from IBM, you get even migration things for Foxpro, maybe other tools for moving to SQL Server. You get the Postgres, you get the MySQL, but in big enterprise, I'm working in a big enterprise, so it's a nightmare talking to them and setting up firewalls and updates, and it ended up when for me it's ending up after all these years, either have something like Elasticsearch to push JSON and feed it, or make it pseudo local with my good old Foxpro SQLite or what else that comes in my mind. But really great work what you really do, and I see you spend a lot of time.
Well, thank you. It's appreciated. Anyone else? Are we missing something? I know people from the Foxpro will want to see more Foxpro stuff in there, and it is on my to-do list. Really, we work on it, and we want to. There's a virtual Fox conference in November. I will show you there that most of it is working. But right now, the business decision was that since the majority of our customers comes from the VO world, and we made some promises there, that we focused on delivering there first. This is like, those are the people who have helped sponsor the development, so I think it was not more than fair that they get a big part of our attention now. But let's say the Visual Studio improvements are definitely for Foxwell people too. Improvements in the area of fabrics and envoys and stuff. It's also for Foxwell people. Fast array access, everybody benefits from that. And in one of the next builds, we will work further on Foxwell stuff like parameterized SQL queries and stuff like that. Anyone else? No? No questions?
This is Matt. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hi. I was just wondering if Fabrice was still poking away on the WinForms possibility of making a UI from WinForms stuff.
Yeah, he's working on that. I've taken some of the other part of the work from his shoulders, so I've taken over some VS work at the moment, Visual Studio work, and Fabrice is now focusing on forms because I told him that has a priority now. He has moved, in the beginning of this year, he spent a lot of time moving his tools over, which are used by many of the VO users. So the Fab tools, that mean nothing to you, but for VO people, that was really, they couldn't miss it. But now that's done, he's working on the Foxwell conversion stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Robert, somebody was asking about Visual Studio improvements in general. He had to leave.
Yeah, that was Sergio. I saw his
Was
question.
Sergio,
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're working on it. It's we're trying to improve the editor speed. We have. I'm not sure whether in build 2.5 or 2.6, but we built drop support for Visual Studio 2015 and moved some of the APIs from synchronous to asynchronous because Microsoft wants that. And by improving the speed and by going from synchronous to asynchronous, I hope you will see less of the gold bar in Visual Studio that complains about the speed, and you will notice that it's faster. And while we're there, we're also fixing things like IntelliSense on if you have a generic type and then you get an element in a for each loop, getting the right type out of the generics, improving type lookup for things that are have an implied type, like the var keyword or out var or stuff like that, that we will recognize that and give you the proper IntelliSense. We will add IntelliSense for extension methods. It's there now, but it's not ready. But so if you have something that, let's say from type foo, and there's an extension method to it, that the methods in this classes will be in the list as if they were part of the foo type itself. So these are the things we're working on. So it's especially in the editor experience. And on top of that, we fixed some things. For example, there was a report about user-defined commands in a WinForm code, which was actually a problem in the Visual Studio parser. That has been fixed. There was someone reported that collapsing blocks were not always correctly positioned. They were missing for functions. That's fixed. There's a problem with if you have a delegate in the middle of a file, especially if the delegate is nested in type, it will break your list in the combo boxes. That's fixed already. So we're working on those things and making things actually a bit better. And we are in the process that we're doing this, we're separating completely the project system from the language service. And the reason we do that is because we want to, in one of the next builds, we want to swap the project system for a project system for .NET Core, which can still then use the same language service for IntelliSense. So by separating those two parts, we can have two project systems, one, let's say the old style project system, and one for .NET Core, which has a different kind of project files in .NET in Visual Studio, and so we'll be able to support both. It's quite some work there. So I'm not sure whether everything is going to go in the next build. We will improve speed in the next build, but .NET Core will probably take 2 or 3 builds, 2 or 3 releases before we have that running. The good thing is that the source code to the C# and the VB project system is also for the .NET Core is public. The bad thing is that we cannot simply inherit from that because of some of the foolish ways they've coded things, but we can copy that code and reuse it. And that's probably what we're going to do. Just like we have copied some of the Roslyn code and used it in our compiler. So we are, like when we started the project, said we're standing on the shoulder of a giant, or in the area of the .NET Core support, we're also standing on the shoulders of another giant, and we can reuse a lot of the stuff that they've done. And we only have to tell it how X# is different from the rest of the languages. Very good question. Will we be able to work with code spaces? Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, we intend to, but I think if you look at Visual Studio code spaces right now, it's probably designed to use with the Visual Studio code editor and not with complete Visual Studio. I haven't seen anyone. For those who don't know what it is, Visual Studio code spaces is a feature of GitHub where you can sort of set up, and GitHub is Microsoft, by the way, where you can set up an environment in the cloud to edit and compile and build your stuff. And it's in beta now, so you cannot, it's not automatically added. I've applied for the beta for the X# repositories in GitHub, but we haven't been accepted yet. But yeah, we will try to work, but I'm not sure if it will be very easy. Of course, you should be able to open our source in Visual Studio Code. We do not have a editor support yet for Visual Studio Code. It requires yet another technology, I'm afraid. Visual Studio Code works with language server, and but we could probably come with language server support, and that should then work in Visual Studio Code too. But if some of you guys want to do that, I'll be more than happy to give you the information, because yeah, our list of things to do is already quite big. But I would love to have that there, and I'm not sure if Visual Studio Code Spaces, if it starts supporting Visual Studio, if they will also will allow you to add third-party language support in there. So if you could install a X# extension for the X# language, I'm not sure if they will allow that. So that it depends a bit of how they will allow you to set up the code spaces. So I'd love to have that. I think the easiest will probably be to add language server support. So you just use Visual Studio code, and then probably have a NuGet package for the X# language server and the X# compiler, and that should just run in Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio will be a bit more complicated, I think. But it would be nice. What you can do at the moment, I'm not sure if anyone has tried, but what is also cool, in the later versions of Visual Studio, you can share your source code. So I'm not sure, you can actually, with 2 persons, edit the same file at the same time. I haven't really tried it in production, but it seems to be working nice, especially if you want to do a peer-to-peer review of source code, and you're both working at home, as we are all now because of the COVID-19. You can actually share your editor with someone in another location without having to do Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and then actually work on the same file together or debug the same file together. This is really cool. And we do not need Visual Studio Code Space for that, but it would be nice if Code Space would work too, yeah. But there's so much new stuff coming on the market, and our team is only so little. Now, if you all would bring in 2 new developers, subscribers basically, so we could double or triple our number of subscribers, we can definitely hire 1 or 2 extra developers on the dev team, and then just get all this cool stuff too. Two questions. The drop down. Yeah, we can. There's an option. Boonam, in the Visual Studio Tools options, let me show you. I'll share my screen. If you go to Tools, Options, and then you type X# here, because there's so many and we're only here, you can sort the items in the navigation bar by name. I'm not sure what the default is. And you can also say that the member combo box should only show you the members of the current selected type. So if you only have one class, it will only show you the ones from that class. And you can specify if you want to see instance variables and defines in the navigation bar or not. So we have some options there. I'm sure not everybody knew this. Lambda expressions in the intermediate window. Ooh. Yeah, that would be nice. To do that, we would actually have to add a X# language support in the immediate window. And we do have script support. We have a scripting engine and a script compiler. And this immediate window works a bit like that. So each line of code is scripted in the current execution environment. So we could hook up the scripting to the immediate window. It's something we have on the list. But to really want to do that, we would have to add dialect support to the scripting, because this also asked by some of you. Because if you're running an app in, let's say, FoxPro dialect, you want to expect this immediate window to also understand FoxPro and not just core. So our first target is to add dialect support to the scripting window, and also to add support to use user-defined commands in the scripting language, basically. And if that's running, then we'll probably link this scripting engine to the immediate window in Visual Studio. But you have to realize that you're then actually bringing in the complete X# runtime there. Now, I'm not sure if Peter asked the question, if you want this during development or debugging. If you're debugging, you already have complete running runtime. Development will be probably a bit more difficult, because then you will actually have to load the X# runtime in your editor, which I probably wouldn't want to do, but that's a question of choice, yeah. But both, in theory, both is possible. Like I said before, if you will bring in 2 paid customers and we can double or triple our budget, we can do so much cool stuff, and we can get someone extra on the team. And right now, yeah, we're kind of limited, basically. We are with the 4 of us, not 4 of us full-time. Chris and I are working full-time, basically, and Fabrice and Nico's part-time. We would love to bring someone on board to help develop these kind of things, but we do not have the financial means at the moment. We're not complaining, but it's just the way it is. Of course, if one of you knows people in Microsoft who are willing to invest in this, yeah, then it will probably be easier. But for now, I haven't had any interest from Microsoft yet to buy our product. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? By the way, you see the picture behind me? I'm not going to tell you what it is, but the location is the new code name for the next build. So those of you who wonder what the next letter will be, we had Anjou and Bandol. The next letter, well, you can probably guess. And this picture is from the area where the next code name is coming from. But you'll have to wait a few weeks to see the next code name in the project. No, it's not Avion. No. It is not the pond of Avion, but it is a bridge, and it is in France. That's right. So to give you an idea, maybe you can Google the image. If no one has any questions left, it's a bit over 5, so I planned an hour, a bit longer, but I think it's okay. Then I would like to stop for now, and I thank you all for your attention. I'm not sure if we're going to do something next week. We'll see. Probably want to do some coding next week on Thursday, but if we get ideas or if guys have requests for something, we can always do it. Otherwise, we'll skip a few weeks. Thanks a lot, and see you soon. Bye, all of you.